Hi, I'm Jay Steven, and over the last 6 months, I've been working on a project called the AI Files. It's a middle school science fiction series that explores what happens when artificial intelligence becomes part of everyday life. But what makes this project a little different is how I created it. I used AI throughout the creative process, not to simply push a button and have it write books for me, but as a tool I could brainstorm with, challenge ideas with, develop characters with, and ultimately help turn one idea into an entire book series. In about 6 months, that experiment grew into 20 books. So in this video, I want to show you how that happened and some of the things I learned along the way. The experience of creating the AI files eventually led me to write this book, How I Used AI to Write 20 Books in 6 months. I wrote it because I wanted to document what actually happened, the process I developed, what worked, what didn't, and what I learned about collaborating with AI along the way. And one of my favorite parts of that story is that I never actually planned to create a 20 book universe. I was trying to do something much simpler, finish just one book. So today I want to tell you how that one book unexpectedly grew into 20. Here's part of this story that I think is important. My original goal wasn't 20 books. It wasn't even a series. I just wanted to finish one. For more than a decade, I had wanted to become a published author. I'd come up with ideas, start writing, get excited about them, and eventually I'd lose momentum, or life would get in the way. When I started experimenting with AI, that began to change, and eventually I finished the first book, which was The Helper. At the time, The Helper wasn't book one of some 20 book plan. It was the book I had finally finished. And once I finished one, something happened that I hadn't expected. I wanted to write another. And finishing The Helper changed something for me. For the first time, I wasn't thinking about a book I wanted to finish someday. I had actually finished one. And almost immediately, I started thinking about another idea. That idea eventually became Toys, the second book in the AI files. But even then, there wasn't some master plan for 20 books. I wasn't sitting down with a spreadsheet mapping out this giant universe. I was simply following ideas as they came and using AI as a creative partner to help me explore and develop them. And one finished book gave me something I'd struggled to maintain before: momentum. This is where the AI files really started becoming something bigger than a collection of individual stories. When I got to book four, which was Ghost Signal, I needed a believable technology billionaire and a company behind some of the technology in the story. Through that creative process, I developed a character named Maverick Preston and his company, Preston Industries. And that's when I had one of those moments where I realized, wait a minute, this could connect everything. Preston Industries didn't have to exist only in Go Signal. It could also explain where some of the technology I'd already created in the first three books came from. So I actually went back to The Helper, I went back to Toys, and I went back to Lost Connection, and added small elements connecting these stories to Preston Industries. And from book four forward, Preston Industries became one of the reoccurring pieces I could use to connect a larger series. Once I realized these stories could exist in the same universe, the way I thought about the series started to change. Now, when I had a new idea, I wasn't necessarily starting from scratch. I already had a world I could build inside. Technology from one story could appear in another. Characters could return. Companies like Preston Industries could connect events that initially seemed completely unrelated. And AI became really useful here because I could continue having conversations about this growing world, brainstorming how a new idea might fit into what I had already created. The books kept coming, and eventually I reached 10. And I remember thinking that maybe 10 books was enough. Maybe that was the series. It wasn't. And so I kept writing. Those 10 books then turned into 15, and then 15 became 20. When I look at all 20 of these books together now, the thing that stands out to me is that this was never the plan. I never sat down and told AI, hey, help me create a 20 book series. I didn't have 20 titles mapped out or some giant master plan for the AI files. It happened one idea at a time, one conversation at a time, and most importantly, one finished book at a time. As the series grew, I became much more intentional about the universe. Characters could return, technology could reappear, something introduced in one book could become important again several books later. Eventually, what started with The Helper became 20 connected stories that all existed inside the same world. But when I look at these 20 books, the biggest lesson I see isn't really about the number 20. It's about what can happen when you simply start with one. And I think this is probably the biggest lesson I took away from the entire experience. You don't have to see the whole path before you start. When I began, I wasn't thinking about 20 books. I was trying to accomplish something I'd wanted to do for years, finish one. AI didn't hand me a 20-book plan. What it did was help me work through some of the creative friction that had stopped me before. And once I finished that first book, I had momentum. I learned from the process. New ideas started coming, and I kept building. So if there's something you've been wanting to create, don't worry about knowing what step 20 looks like. Start with one idea, finish one thing, build from there. Because sometimes you don't know where that first step is going to take you until you actually take it. Before I go, the AI Files is just one of the projects I've been working on. I also write inspiring sports stories for younger readers, practical books about my experience creating with AI, and I've recently launched the J. Stephen Coloring Fun series for younger kids. If you'd like to check out any of my books, I've linked my Amazon author page in the description below. I'll also include a direct link to how I used AI to write 20 books in 6 months, where I share my full experience, not just the topic we talked about today. And this is just the first video in this series. The book covers a number of other topics and lessons from my journey, and I'll be exploring some of those in future videos. Next time, I'm going to talk about why I stopped treating AI like a search engine and started treating it like a creative collaborator. Thanks for watching. I'm Jay Steven, and I'll see you in the next one.